The cry for help the sun had just begun to set on the barren planet. It cast a soft orange glow across the empty land, painting the landscape with warmth. A light breeze stirred the dust, but everything else was silent. A human soldier named Jack, wearing the worn-out uniform of his unit, walked along the edge of the rocky terrain. His boots crunched on the dry earth, and the soft hum of his communication device buzzed faintly in his ear. He had just completed a long day of patrol and was ready to head back to his ship, but something stopped him. A sound, faint but unmistakable, reached his ears, a cry for help. It was not a human cry, but something different. It carried a strange, almost melodic quality. As if it belonged to something not of this world, Jack's hand instinctively went to the weapon at his side. He paused and scanned the horizon, trying to locate the source of the cry. There was nothing at first, just the endless expanse of rocky hills and dry bushes. But then he heard it again. This time, closer. Desperation filled the air as the cry rang out, weak and trembling. His heart raced. Without thinking, Jack moved toward the sound. He wasn't sure what he would find, but he knew one thing. Someone needed help. As Jack climbed over a small hill, he spotted a figure lying motionless on the ground. At first, he thought it might be an animal, but as he got closer, his breath caught in his throat. It was a woman, but not like any human woman he had ever seen. Her skin was a pale shade of blue, and her eyes glowed faintly, the color of distant stars. Her features were sharp and alien, but what struck Jack most was the look of pure terror and exhaustion on her face. Beside her, a small bundle lay still on the ground. The baby. Jack's heart pounded as he crouched beside her. The alien woman looked up at him, her glowing eyes filled with fear. Her breath was shallow, her body trembling. She had been through something terrible, but the most disturbing thing of all was the baby lying next to her. The little one's body was limp, its chest barely rising and falling with shallow breaths. Jack didn't know what to do. He had never seen anything like this before. He had heard stories of alien races, of worlds far away, but he never thought he would encounter one like this. He had never been trained for something like this. The woman reached out weakly, her hand trembling as it touched his arm. She struggled to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, help, my baby." The words were simple, but the weight behind them was undeniable. Jack could see the desperation in her eyes, the fear that her baby was slipping away from her, the terror of being all alone in an unknown world. Jack's mind raced. His training as a soldier didn't prepare him for this kind of situation. What was he supposed to do? He was just one man, far from any support, with no idea how to save an alien child. But the woman's plea touched something deep inside him. He couldn't walk away. He gently lifted the baby, cradling it in his arms. The child was so small, fragile, and cold. Jack could feel its tiny heartbeat flutter weakly against his chest. His hands shook as he tried to keep it safe, to do something, anything, to help. "Don't worry," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if she could understand him. "I'll help you. I won't leave you." The alien woman's eyes filled with tears as she nodded weakly, her face a mixture of relief and sorrow. She couldn't speak much more, her energy all but drained. She had been running, hiding from someone. But Jack couldn't focus on that now. He had to get the baby help. With all his strength, Jack stood up, holding the baby gently in his arms. The alien woman struggled to get to her feet, but Jack was already on the move. He needed to find his ship fast. He had no idea what kind of danger might be lurking or if the child would survive, but he couldn't just leave them here. As Jack made his way back toward the ship, he felt the weight of the situation press down on him. What was happening? Who were these people? And why was this alien woman in such a desperate state? One thing was certain, he wasn't just dealing with an alien. He was dealing with someone who had a mother's love, a love so strong it had brought her to the edge of death to protect her child. And Jack had made a promise. He would not break it. The question now was, could he save them in time? The stranger's plea. Jack hurried across the rocky landscape, the weight of the alien baby in his arms growing heavier with every step. He didn't know how long it would take to reach his ship or even if he could get there in time. But there was no turning back now. The alien woman followed him, stumbling, her legs shaky as she struggled to keep up. She looked as though she might collapse at any moment, but she pressed on, her eyes locked on her child in Jack's arms. There was nothing more important to her than her baby's survival. Jack could see it in her eyes, pure, unrelenting fear. The path to his ship was long, and every step seemed to stretch the silence between them. The only sounds were the distant cries of unknown creatures and the soft hum of Jack's cum device, barely audible over the wind. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something was watching them, lurking in the shadows of the barren hills. "Are you ... okay?" Jack asked, his voice low as he glanced over at the alien woman. She didn't respond immediately, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The strain was clear on her face, but she kept pushing forward. "Please, my child," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please save her." Jack's heart tightened at her words. He had never seen someone so desperate. The baby was still limp in his arms, and he feared the worst. But how could he help them? He was just a soldier with no medical training, no knowledge of alien biology. What if it was too late? The woman's gaze remained fixed on her child, her face pale, her eyes dark with worry. Jack could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. He wasn't just carrying a baby. He was carrying a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. They continued walking. Jack's pace steady but hurried, his thoughts a blur of confusion and fear. As the ship came into view, he allowed himself a brief moment of relief. They were almost there. But that relief was short-lived. A sharp noise echoed in the distance. A rustling sound, followed by a low, ominous growl. Jack froze, his heart racing. He knew that sound. He had heard it before during his training. It was the unmistakable noise of something hunting, something with a predator's instinct. He glanced at the alien woman, her eyes widened with fear. As she looked back over her shoulder, her body tensing, she spoke in her own language, the words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "What did you say?" Jack asked, his grip tightening on his weapon. He didn't know if she could understand him, but he had to know. The sound was growing louder, closer now. Whatever it wasn't far behind. Her voice cracked as she spoke again. "They're coming. They'll kill us." Who is coming?" Jack demanded, but the woman didn't answer. She was already moving faster, her legs shaking as she pushed herself to run. Jack followed, his mind racing. Who was she running from? What was chasing them? He glanced over his shoulder, the sound of growling growing louder, closer. There was no time to lose. He quickened his pace, his eyes scanning the landscape for any sign of movement. He could hear the rustling now, not far behind. They were closing in fast. Without warning, the ground beneath Jack's feet shifted. He stumbled, nearly losing his balance, and in that split second, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall, dark, and humanoid, with glowing eyes that pierced the darkness. The creature's sharp teeth gleamed in the dim light as it growled. Its gaze fixed on the alien woman. "Get back," Jack shouted, raising his weapon. The creature didn't move. It just stared, its eyes flickering with an unsettling intelligence. The alien woman cried out in fear. But Jack was already moving, positioning himself between the creature and her. He didn't know if his weapon would even work on something like this, but he had no choice. He aimed, his finger trembling on the trigger. "Please, don't," the alien woman pleaded, her voice breaking. She reached out to stop Jack, her hand weakly pushing against his arm. "Not like this. ... Jack hesitated, his heart pounding. In his chest, what was she trying to tell him? Why didn't she want him to fight? Before he could make sense of it, the creature took a step forward, its sharp claws scraping against the ground. Jack's pulse quickened and his mind raced. He wasn't ready to die today. He had to protect them. But why was this alien woman trying to stop him? Just as he was about to fire, the alien woman collapsed to her knees, clutching her stomach, as if in pain. Her body trembled violently, and Jack rushed to her side. "What's happening?" He asked, but she didn't answer. Her breath was ragged, and her eyes were wide with fear. The creature, sensing the weakness, moved closer, its massive form looming over them. Jack stood protectively in front of her, weapon raised, ready to fight. But the alien woman raised her hand weakly, and Jack paused, his finger still on the trigger. "Please, ... No more fighting," she whispered. "I beg you." The creature stopped. It stood still for a moment, its glowing eyes locked on the alien woman. There was an unspoken understanding between them, something Jack couldn't grasp. After a tense moment, the creature turned and retreated back into the shadows. Disappearing as quickly as it had come, Jack stood frozen, his weapon still raised, his mind spinning. What had just happened? Why had the creature backed off? What did the woman mean by her plea? The alien woman slowly stood, her body shaking but no longer in pain. She looked at Jack, her eyes filled with gratitude and confusion. "Thank you," she whispered. "I did not want you to fight. They will not harm us. I follow their ways." Jack didn't know what to say. He was exhausted, confused, and overwhelmed. The alien world he had stepped into was nothing like he could have imagined, and it felt like he had barely scratched the surface of the mysteries that lay ahead. One thing was clear: the situation was far from over, and whatever had chased them was just the beginning. As Jack guided the woman and her child toward the safety of the ship, his mind raced with questions. What was this alien race? Why had they been chased? And what did the creature's retreat mean? And more importantly, what would Jack do next? The unexpected bond. The ship's engines hummed steadily as Jack secured the airlock behind him. He glanced over at the alien woman, who was still clutching her baby tightly, her gaze locked on the child as if afraid to look away for even a second. They had made it to safety, but something in Jack's gut told him this wasn't the end of the danger. It was only just beginning. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was sterile, quiet, the low buzz of machinery filling the silence. Jack moved quickly to a medical bay in the back of the ship, hoping the station's basic equipment could help the alien child. He set the baby gently on the exam table and turned to the woman. She didn't speak, but her eyes followed every move he made. Jack reached for the medkit, but then hesitated. He had no idea what kind of treatments the baby might need. This wasn't a human child. The alien woman's features were still drawn with exhaustion, her skin pale and dotted with what looked like scars from long-term survival. She hadn't said much since the encounter with the creature, but Jack knew she was processing more than he could understand. He tried to meet her gaze. "I'll do my best," he said softly, although it sounded weak even to him. She didn't respond, but he saw a flicker of trust in her eyes. The ship's life support systems hummed around them, and Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the silence was suffocating. He was out of his depth. He had no training for this. All he knew was that if he didn't help them, he didn't save this child, he might never forgive himself. As he fumbled with the unfamiliar alien medical instruments, he thought back to the first time he'd heard the aliens cry for help. He hadn't known what to expect. He certainly hadn't expected the child to be so fragile. And now, as he watched the mother's helpless eyes, he realized that this wasn't just about saving one child. It was about saving a whole species, maybe more. The alien woman's voice broke through his thoughts, soft and barely audible. "She's dying." Jack turned to face her. Her eyes were filled with sorrow and a kind of resignation. He could see the weight of her words in her face. This wasn't just about an alien child to her. This was everything. This child was her last hope, her last chance. She had nothing left but her baby and the faint hope of survival. "I won't let her die," Jack said, his voice firm despite his growing panic. But the woman shook her head slightly, almost imperceptibly. "It's too late." Before Jack could protest, the ship's control panel beeped, signaling an incoming transmission. Jack glanced at the screen and felt his pulse quicken when he saw the alert, a distress signal, and not from any human ship. His hand instinctively went to the weapon holstered at his side, though he knew it wouldn't be enough against whatever was coming. He knew that whatever this was, it was connected to the alien woman. She had made it clear earlier that she was running from something. And now it seemed they were about to face it. The woman's eyes locked onto the screen, her expression changing from exhaustion to a kind of sharp alertness Jack hadn't seen before. She stood up, her body trembling slightly as she approached the console. Her hand hovered over the communication controls, her fingers brushing the panel as if unsure whether she should even try to respond. Jack watched her, confused by her hesitation. "Who is it? What's going on?" She didn't answer at first. But then, her voice barely above a whisper, she spoke again. "They're coming for me. They'll come for her next. They always do." "Who?" Jack demanded, a surge of fear gripping his chest. He wanted answers, but the alien woman was silent, her gaze fixed on the console, her fingers trembling. Suddenly, a loud noise cut through the quiet of the ship, a series of harsh knocks at the outer hull. It was no longer a distant threat. It was here. Jack's heart raced as the ship's systems went into lockdown mode, the emergency shields activating. He could feel the tension building in his chest. The alien woman had fallen silent, her body trembling. Jack could see the fear in her eyes again, stronger now than ever before. Whoever was out there, whatever they were, was closing in fast. "Stay here," Jack said, his voice firm. "I'll handle this. Just stay with your child." He turned and rushed to the bridge, his hand gripping the control panel as he readied. The ship's defense systems, but the control screen only displayed static. Something was blocking their signal. The shields were holding, but not for long. Whoever was out there was going to break through. His thoughts flashed to the alien woman and her child, still in the medical bay. Whatever it was coming for the man this time. Jack wasn't sure he was prepared to face it. He knew that danger was real now. They weren't safe. They might never be safe again. A sudden flash of light from outside the ship caught Jack's attention, and he froze. The darkness beyond the hull had been replaced by eerie, pulsing lights. Shadows moved outside, their forms massive and menacing, surrounding the ship. A chill ran down his spine as he recognized the craft. It was unmistakable. He had seen it in the reports, in the warnings about alien invaders, the ones no one had thought were real. The enemy was here, and they had come for her, for the alien mother, for her child. And if Jack didn't act now, they would take them both. He clenched his fists, the weight of the situation crashing down on him. There was no turning back. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was a fight for survival. And Jack was about to find out just how far he was willing to go to protect them. The silent battle of the ship's hull groaned under the strain as the mysterious enemy craft pressed in closer. Jack's eyes flicked over the control panel, searching for any way to fight back. The enemy ships were surrounding them, their dark forms circling like predators ready to strike. Outside, the pulsing lights cast long, ominous shadows, their strange energy illuminating the darkness in an unsettling dance. He clenched his fists. There was no way out. He wasn't prepared for a full-scale battle. His ship wasn't equipped for anything like this. It was a basic transport vessel, not a warship. But there was no time for fear. His mission, now more than ever, was clear. Protect the alien mother and child. Protect them at all costs. The alien woman's voice cut through the air, low and desperate. They have found us. They won't stop until we are. She trailed off, her voice trembling with the weight of the words she couldn't finish. Her fear was palpable. Jack looked back at her, his eyes narrowing. Who are they? Why are they chasing you? She didn't respond right away, and Jack's frustration began to bubble up. The silence was crushing him. They were seconds away from being boarded, and the alien woman still hadn't explained what was happening. Why did they want her? Why did they want her child? Please tell me, Jack demanded, spinning toward her. Her eyes locked onto his, filled with a mix of pain and resignation. They are the Traskians, she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. They are the ones who took everything. My people. My world. ... Jack's heart clenched. He could feel the weight of her words, the gravity of her situation. The Traskians. He had heard whispers of them during his briefings, ruthless invaders who conquered worlds for their resources. But he had never believed the stories. He had never imagined that something so terrible could be real. She continued, her voice shaking. They are hunters. They do not forgive. They hunt down the last of us, and when they find us, they take everything we have left. Jack turned back to the control panel, his mind racing. The ship was still holding steady under the shield's protection, but that wouldn't last long. The Traskians would find a way in. They always did. We have to leave, Jack muttered, his hands flying over the controls as he plotted an escape course. We need to outrun them. But the ship's system warned him that the Traskians' ship was far more advanced. They would never outrun them. The only choice was to fight, but Jack knew that wasn't an option. Not in a transport ship like this. The alien woman's soft voice reached him again. No, we cannot run. They will find us no matter where we go. We must stand our ground, or we will lose everything. Jack's thoughts spun in circles. He didn't know how to fight back against something like this. He wasn't even sure who was more dangerous, the Traskians or the alien woman. If they knew her value, if they understood what she was capable of, they would stop at nothing to capture her, without thinking. Jack did the only thing he could think of. He reached for his weapon, strapped to his side. But then, as he turned to leave the cockpit and brace for whatever was coming, a strange sound filled the ship, soft and almost musical. Inside herself, Jack watched, confused but intrigued. What was she doing? Wait, he said, his voice filled with uncertainty. What's happening? The woman turned to him, her expression calm now, almost serene. I am preparing. I will not let them take my child. I will not let them destroy everything. Jack's eyes widened as he noticed something he hadn't seen before: energy. Faint but growing, surrounding her body like a shimmering shield. It wasn't like anything he had ever seen in his training or on the battlefield. It was raw, untamed power. You're using some kind of power? Jack asked, his voice shaking with a mix of awe and disbelief. The alien woman nodded slowly. It is the power of my people. We are able to call on the energy of our world, the life force that binds us together, but it comes with a price. Jack stepped back, still trying to comprehend what was happening. Was this some kind of weapon? A defense mechanism. She had spoken of her people, of the Traskians, but he hadn't expected her to be this capable. "I can help you fight them," Jack said, his voice firm, though he had no idea how he could assist her. "But we need a plan, now." The woman's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, Jack saw something other than fear in them: hope. "You cannot help me the way you think," she said, "but your presence, it will shield my child." The words were cryptic, but Jack didn't question them. He didn't have time. The Traskian ships were closing in. Jack moved quickly, preparing the ship's emergency defenses as best he could, though he knew they wouldn't hold for long. Then, just as the Traskian ships began their final approach, the alien woman raised her arms high above her head. The energy surrounding her flared to life, growing brighter, more intense. The ship shuddered, and Jack could feel the power reverberating through the walls. He wasn't sure what was happening, but he felt the ship's shield reinforce, growing stronger with each passing second. The Traskian ships fired, their weapons striking the ship's hull with bone-rattling force. Jack's eyes snapped to the control panel, and to his astonishment, the shields were holding barely. But there was something more happening here, something Jack couldn't fully understand. The alien woman wasn't just protecting the ship, she was calling on forces beyond his comprehension. "We need more time," she whispered, her eyes closed in concentration. "Just a little longer." Jack nodded, gritting his teeth as the ship rocked again under the strain. The battle was far from over. But for the first time since they'd been attacked, Jack felt a spark of hope. Together, they would fight back. The truth revealed. The hum of the ship's engines filled the air, the steady pulse of energy mixing with the crackling sounds of battle outside. Jack stood at the control panel, his knuckles white from gripping it too tightly. His heart raced, his mind spinning with questions. The alien woman's power was unlike anything he had ever witnessed, but as the Traskian ships continued to bombard their hull, he wondered just how much longer they could hold on. The alien woman stood beside him, her body now glowing faintly with that same otherworldly energy. Her hands were raised, her face etched with focus as she guided the shield to withstand the relentless assault. Jack could feel the shift in the air as the power she wielded intensified, but even this wasn't enough. The enemy ships were relentless, and their weapons were overwhelming. "Hold on," Jack shouted, his voice barely audible over the sound of the ship's groaning metal. He turned to her, his eyes searching for any sign of weakness, any hint that they might have a chance. "I cannot hold them for much longer," she replied, her voice soft but steady. "They are too powerful." Jack's gaze flicked to the screen, watching as the Traskian ships continued their approach. But then, something unexpected happened. The enemy ships, which had been closing in with deadly intent, suddenly halted. The massive ships stopped their advance. Hovering just outside the range of the ship's shield, the silence that followed was almost deafening. Jack didn't trust it. Something was wrong. He knew the Traskians never backed down, not unless they had a reason. "What are they doing?" he muttered, stepping closer to the control panel. The alien woman lowered her arms, her energy dissipating as the shield stabilized. "They are waiting," she said, her voice cold and distant. "They want us to know they have us cornered." Jack turned to her, his eyes narrowed. "Why aren't they attacking? They could destroy us with one shot." The woman's expression remained unchanged. "They do not kill without purpose. They are not here for me. They are here for my daughter." Jack's heart skipped a beat. "Your daughter?" he repeated, his mind racing to process the words. He had assumed the child was hers, but now, hearing her speak of it with such gravity, he felt something shift. There was more to this than just a mother and child fleeing from enemies. There was something much bigger at play. The woman turned to face him, her eyes finally locking onto his with a weight that made him shiver. "I did not tell you before because you would not understand," she said, her voice quiet, almost mournful. "But now, there is no choice. They want my daughter because she is the last of her kind. She is a royal-era princess who holds the key to an ancient power, a power that could reshape the fate of worlds." Jack's mind reeled. A princess. An heir to some ancient power. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about something much larger, something that could alter the entire balance of the galaxy, her kind. Jack asked, his voice hoarse. "What do you mean? Who are you really?" The alien woman took a deep breath, as if gathering the strength to reveal something long buried. "I am from a planet known as Yavani. It was once a thriving world, rich in knowledge and power. But the Traskians came, and they ravaged everything. My people fought back, but the Traskians were too strong. We were forced to flee, scattered across the galaxy, and my daughter is the last living royal. She carries the bloodline of the ancient kings." Jack's mind raced. So, they're not just after her because she's a child. They want her for her bloodline, for the power she carries. The woman nodded slowly, her gaze never leaving his. Yes, the Traskians believe that if they capture her, they can use her power to control the galaxy. They know that if she is free, she will be able to stop them. My people. We are connected to the energy of the universe, and my daughter is the key to unlocking the full potential of that power. Jack took a step back, trying to process the enormity of what she was saying. A child, the last of her kind, carrying the power to stop an entire empire. It sounded like something out of a legend, a story too impossible to believe. Yet here she was, standing before him, and her words were not just a warning, they were a plea. "But why didn't you tell me this before?" Jack asked, his voice strained. "Why didn't you warn me about what we're up against?" The alien woman's eyes darkened, the weight of her burden clear on her face. "I could not. I didn't want to endanger you more than I already had. I did not know you well enough. But now," she trailed off, her voice breaking with emotion, "now I have no choice. You are the only one who can help us." Jack stared at her for a moment, trying to understand what she was asking. He had come here thinking he was just helping an alien mother and child escape from danger. Now, it was clear that he had stumbled into something far bigger than he could have ever imagined. The alien woman continued, her tone firm, despite the emotions swirling in her eyes. "The Traskians will not stop until they have her. They will destroy everything in their path to get what they want. But if we can stop them, if we can get her to safety, we can end this war before it even begins." Jack swallowed hard. He had never signed up for something like this. But as he looked at the alien woman, the determination in her eyes mirrored his own. He wasn't just going to stand by and let the Traskians win. "Not now. Tell me what we need to do," Jack said, his voice steady. "We'll fight them together." Alien woman gave him a small, grateful nod, but there was something else in her eyes, a spark of hope. For the first time since their journey had begun, Jack felt that they might have a chance. He turned back to the control panel, his mind already working on the next steps. The enemy ships were still hovering outside, waiting. But he didn't know how much time they had, but he was going to make sure they used every second of it. He wasn't going to lose them, not after everything they had been through. The battle for the galaxy had just begun, and Jack was ready to fight. A moment of hope. The harsh sounds of the Traskian weapons pounding against the ship's hull continued to reverberate throughout the vessel. Jack's hands flew over the controls, fingers trembling with the weight of the moment. The alien woman beside him was still, her focus unwavering, her glowing energy surrounding her like an invisible shield. She had told him that her daughter, the last royal of her people, held the key to stopping the Traskians. But Jack didn't know how to fight a war that spanned galaxies. He was a soldier, not a hero. The enemy ships hovered outside, waiting. But Jack knew that their patience wouldn't last. They would strike again soon. And when they did, there might not be enough left of the ship to even call it a battle. "We don't have much time," Jack muttered to himself, his mind racing. "We need a plan, something that will give us a chance." Daughter, this was about the fate of entire worlds. And Jack, somehow, was at the center of it all. "They will come for us again," she said, her voice calm but filled with an urgency that Jack couldn't ignore. "But we cannot hide forever. We have one chance to stop them, one chance to stop the war before it spreads." Jack swallowed hard, trying to comprehend what she was saying. How? How do we stop them? The alien woman's gaze flicked to her daughter, who was lying in the medical bay. Her tiny form was still, her breathing shallow. But Jack had seen a flicker of life in her eyes before, a spark of hope that hadn't yet been extinguished. She wasn't gone yet. "We need to reach the Heartstone," she said quietly. The words felt like a riddle to Jack. The Heartstone is the source of our power. It is hidden deep in the heart of my world, the planet Giovanni. It holds the energy we need to defeat the Traskians. If we can get to it, we can turn the tide. Jack frowned, trying to process the information. "You want to go back to Giovanni, but the Traskians control it now, don't they? You're not just asking us to fight them, you're asking us to take on their entire empire." The alien woman nodded, her face somber. "Yes, we cannot let them control the Heartstone. If they do, the galaxy will fall. If they use its power, no one will be able to stop them. My daughter is the only one who can access the Heartstone's power. But she needs to be whole again. She needs to be free." Jack's heart sank. The stakes had never been higher, but he had never been this unsure of himself. He had fought in wars, but this was beyond anything he had ever imagined. A child, an alien princess carrying the key to an ancient power. An enemy that had already destroyed countless worlds. He turned to the control panel, his mind working through the possibilities. Giovanni was lost. The Traskians had wiped out most of its people, leaving only a few scattered survivors, and now they controlled the Heartstone, the source of the planet's power. It sounded like an impossible mission, a suicide run at best. But the alien woman was right about one thing. They couldn't run anymore. The Traskians wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. Jack had to make a choice. His hands shook as he activated the CUM system, trying to reach any human fleet nearby. But there was only static. The Traskian ships had jammed all frequencies. They were alone, completely alone. He felt a surge of helplessness, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. But then he remembered something the alien woman had said. "We need to reach the Heartstone." "Let's do it," Jack said, his voice more determined than he had ever felt. "Let's go to Giovanni." The alien woman's eyes softened as she placed a hand on his arm, her touch surprisingly gentle. "You are not prepared for what lies ahead," she said. "This is not a battle you can win with weapons. It will require something more." Jack shook his head, trying to push aside the fear creeping in. "We don't have time for doubts. We have to do this. For her, for the galaxy." The alien woman nodded, her gaze moving toward the medical bay, where her daughter lay. For her, she echoed softly. "But there is more you need to understand. The Heartstone. It is not just a source of power. It is the heart of my people. It holds our collective energy, our memories, our history, and only one can access it. My daughter is the key, but her connection to it is fragile, if she is not strong enough to control it." Jack didn't need her to finish the sentence. The weight of what she was saying hit him like a punch to the gut. If the girl couldn't access the Heartstone, if she couldn't control its power, they would all be doomed. The entire mission could fall apart in an instant. "Then we'll make sure she's strong enough," Jack said, his voice firm. "We'll protect her. I'll make sure she gets there." The alien woman looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and something else, something Jack couldn't quite understand. "You have no idea how much that means to me," she said softly. But Jack didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man on the edge of a precipice with no clear way forward. Yavani was a world lost to war, its people scattered. The Traskians had taken everything, and now they were coming for the last hope of survival. Jack didn't know how they were going to make it, but as he looked at the alien woman, he realized something important. This wasn't just about the fight anymore. This wasn't just about a soldier doing his duty. This was about saving the future. It was about saving a child who carried the power to change everything with a deep breath. Jack powered up the ship's engines. The stars outside blurred into streaks of light as they made their way toward the distant planet of Giovanni. "We're going to make it," Jack whispered to himself. "We have to." The journey was going to be dangerous, there was no doubt about that. But for the first time since he had met the alien woman, Jack believed they had a chance. And with that hope, they sped toward the unknown, the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. Asterisk the ultimate sacrifice, the journey to Giovanni was long and treacherous. The dark expanse of space seeming to stretch on forever as Jack piloted the ship through the cold void. The ship's once familiar hum now seemed a constant reminder of how isolated they were. With each passing minute, the danger grew, and the tension inside the ship was nearly suffocating. Jack's eyes constantly flicked to the navigation panel, watching as the stars warped and shifted into the streaks of faster-than-light travel. The silence in the cockpit was deafening. Behind him, the alien woman, now seated in the medical bay with her daughter, seemed as quiet and focused as ever. It was hard to tell if she was gathering strength for what was ahead, or if she had resigned herself to whatever fate awaited them. The baby princess, still fragile and weak, had not shown any signs of improvement. She was too still, too lifeless, and Jack could feel the weight of her fragility with every passing moment. Her mother, though, continued to work tirelessly, drawing on the strange energy of her people to keep the baby alive. Jack didn't know how much longer she could hold out. He wasn't sure what was worse, the Traskians catching up to them, or the possibility that they might reach Giovanni too late to save the princess. "We're getting closer," Jack murmured to himself, trying to shake the growing sense of dread in his chest. The coordinates they had punched into the navigation system were correct, but something in the pit of his stomach told him they weren't going to find a welcoming committee when they arrived. Giovanni, it's a thriving world filled with knowledge. And peace was now nothing more than a shattered shell, devastated by years of Traskian occupation. The last of its people, scattered and broken, had fled into hiding. The heart stoned its power. Its very essence was all that remained, hidden deep beneath the planet's surface. And it was up to the alien princess to unlock it. "Hold on, baby," the alien woman whispered softly from the medical bay. Jack didn't know if she was speaking to him or to her daughter, but the words cut through the quiet. There was something in her voice, a rawness, a tenderness that caught Jack off guard. The battle ahead would be their hardest yet. They weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to save the future, to save a child who was the last hope of her people. "I won't let you down," Jack said quietly to himself, staring at the coordinates again, knowing that it wasn't just his life on the line anymore. The planet Giovanni finally loomed in the distance, a pale blue orb surrounded by debris from years of conflict. The once beautiful world was marred by the scars of war, its surface torn apart by explosions and the ravages of time. Jack could feel the weight of it pressing on him as he brought the ship into orbit. Every part of him screamed that this mission was impossible. But there was no turning back now. The Traskian fleet wasn't far behind. The battle was coming, and it would be one they couldn't afford to lose. They would either save the galaxy or see it swallowed whole by the Traskian Empire. But Jack knew one thing for sure: they didn't act quickly. If they didn't find the Heartstone, they were all doomed. "Get ready," Jack said, his voice steady as he activated the landing gear. He turned to look at the alien woman who was preparing herself in the medical bay. She had done all she could to keep the princess alive, but it wasn't enough. Now they were down to their last hope. The ship shuddered as it descended through the atmosphere of Giovanni, and Jack gripped the controls, steering them toward the coordinates that would lead them to the Heartstone's location. The storm clouds below parted briefly, revealing a vast expanse of ruined cities and desolate landscapes. There was no sign of life, no sign of anything but destruction. "Do you see it?" Jack asked, his eyes scanning the barren terrain. The alien woman's voice came through the comm system. "Yes, it is below the ruins of the capital city. The Heartstone is buried deep within the sacred chamber. But we must act quickly. If we are too late, the Traskians will take it from us." As the ship made its final approach to the landing site, Jack felt a deep sense of unease. The Traskians were close. Too close. They wouldn't wait much longer. "We have to make it there first," Jack said, his voice firm, but his heart pounding in his chest. The ship touched down with a soft thud, the engines powering down as they landed on the cracked and broken surface of Giovanni. The alien woman, her eyes filled with determination, stood beside her daughter in the medical bay. Jack could see the strength in her posture, but he also saw the fear. Fear that they might be too late. Jack reached for his weapon and turned toward the exit. "Let's move. Stay close. We'll get the princess to the Heartstone, and we'll end this." The door of the ship opened with a soft hiss, and they stepped out into the wasteland of a planet once filled with life. The ruins of ancient temples and destroyed cities loomed around them, casting long shadows across the landscape. The alien woman moved with purpose, our eyes scanning the horizon, and Jack kept a hand on his weapon, watching for any sign of the Traskians. They had to be close. They couldn't let them get to the Heartstone first. They moved through the ruins in silence, the only sound their footsteps echoing off the empty streets. The weight of what they were doing settled heavily on Jack's shoulders. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for the future of an entire species. He was fighting for a child who held the key to saving them all. They reached the entrance of a massive temple, its entrance covered in debris. The alien woman stepped forward, her hand trembling as she touched the stone door. "It's here," she whispered. "The Heartstone is within." Jack nodded. "Let's go." But as they entered the temple, a chill ran through the air. The walls were lined with ancient markings, glowing faintly in the dark. And then Jack heard it. The unmistakable sound of footsteps coming from behind them. "They're here," the alien woman said softly. Jack spun around, raising his weapon, ready to fight. But it was already too late. The Traskians had arrived, and they were ready for war. The Heartstone's power. The massive stone doors of the temple groaned as they slowly opened, revealing the dimly lit chamber within. The air was thick with dust and the weight of centuries. Jack stepped forward cautiously, his weapon still in hand, though it felt useless now in the face of what lay ahead. Behind him, the alien woman clutched her daughter tightly, the child's fragile form almost swallowed by her mother's arms. Every step seemed to echo in the silence, each moment heavier than the last. The Heartstone, the source of all the power they had come here for, lay just beyond the central chamber, hidden deep within the ancient temple. But Jack knew that getting to it wasn't going to be easy. The Traskians would be right behind them. If they didn't reach the Heartstone first, it would be too late. "We need to move fast," Jack whispered, his voice low. "Once we're inside, We stay together. Don't break formation. Understand?" The alien woman nodded silently, her gaze still fixed on the distance. Her daughter was still unconscious, her tiny chest rising and falling in weak breaths, a pale reminder of the urgency of their mission. They reached the threshold of the inner sanctum, where the Heartstone was said to reside. The walls here were covered in glowing symbols, the remnants of an ancient civilization whose wisdom and power had been all but erased by the Traskian invasion. These symbols seemed to pulse faintly, their light flickering like a heartbeat. As if the very air in the room was alive, the alien woman stepped forward, her hand outstretched as if she could feel the energy in the room calling to her. She moved with purpose, her expression one of both hope and fear. "It's here," she whispered, more to herself than to Jack. "I can feel it." Jack watched her closely, his grip tightening on his weapon. His instincts screamed that they weren't alone. The Traskians were out there, and they would not let them reach the Heartstone without a fight. They could be waiting just outside the chamber, hidden in the shadows, ready to strike at any moment. The alien woman turned to him, her voice calm but urgent. "We must place her on the altar," she said, gesturing toward a large, smooth stone platform at the center of the room. "Only the royal bloodline can access the Heartstone's power. She must be connected to it." Jack looked at the altar, his eyes narrowing. The stone surface was covered with intricate carvings, and in its center, a glowing crystal pulsated with energy, and energy Jack could feel even from where he stood. It was like standing at the edge of a powerful storm, the energy crackling in the air, begging to be harnessed with no time to waste. Jack nodded and helped the alien woman lay her daughter gently on the stone. The princess's tiny body seemed so fragile, almost ethereal, as she lay there, her breathing shallow but steady. The alien woman stepped back, her eyes fixed on her daughter, her expression a mix of sorrow and determination. "This is it," she murmured. "The Heartstone's power will heal her, but it will require everything. Her strength, her life force, will bind with it." Jack could feel the tension in the room, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He didn't understand the full depth of what was happening. All he knew was that this child, this princess, was the key to saving everything, and the Traskians would stop at nothing to prevent her from using that power. The ground beneath them began to shake, a low rumble that vibrated through the stone floor. Jack looked up, his heart racing. They were here. The Traskians had arrived. The alien woman's eyes flickered toward the entrance, her expression hardening. "It's too late. They've found us." Jack gripped his weapon tightly, ready to defend them both. But before he could make a move, a figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the chamber. It was one of the Traskian soldiers, his towering form encased in dark armor, his face hidden behind a helmet. He raised his weapon, a sleek energy rifle pointed directly at them. "Step away from the Heartstone," the Traskian's voice boomed through the chamber, cold and commanding. "The child belongs to us." Jack's blood ran cold, but he didn't flinch. "You'll have to get through me first." The Traskian soldier's laugh was harsh, devoid of humor. "You are already too late. The Heartstone will be ours. The power of this world will be ours." The alien woman stepped forward, her hand raised as if to protect her daughter. "You cannot have her. She is the last hope for all of us. If you take her, you doom everything." The Traskian soldier's eyes flickered with something like amusement. "You speak of hope. But hope is a fragile thing, and we do not need it. We need power." He stepped forward, his energy rifle aimed steadily at the alien woman. "Move aside, now." Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he stepped in front of the alien woman, his weapon raised. "No," he said, his voice low but firm. "You're not taking anyone." The Traskian soldier didn't hesitate. He fired. The shot echoed through the chamber, the blast of energy knocking Jack to the ground with a violent force. His head spun as he struggled to stay conscious. He could hear the alien woman's voice crying out for her daughter, but everything felt distant. Muted with great effort, Jack pushed himself up, his vision blurry, his body aching. He could hear the Traskian soldier advancing, the sound of his heavy footsteps closing in. But Jack couldn't let him win. He had to protect them. Through the haze of pain, Jack saw the alien woman kneeling by her daughter, her hand hovering over the princess's chest. The Heartstone's energy flared brighter, the light in the chamber intensifying. Jack could feel the power in the air, growing stronger, more urgent. He realized with sudden clarity that this wasn't just about fighting the Traskians, it was about unlocking the power that would save them all. The princess's eyes fluttered open, the Heartstone pulsed, and then everything changed. The final stand the world seemed to freeze as the energy from the Heartstone flared into life, filling the chamber with a brilliant, almost blinding light. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, his pulse racing in time with the pulsing rhythm of the crystal. Every inch of the room vibrated with power, the very air thick with energy. It felt as though the planet itself was alive, responding to the princess, to the alien woman, to the very bloodline that had been hidden for so long. The Traskian soldier, still standing across the room, staggered back as if the light itself had struck him. His helmeted face flickered with confusion, as if the power he was witnessing was beyond his comprehension. But Jack knew it was only a matter of time before the Traskians realized they couldn't afford to lose control of the Heartstone. Would not wait for long. The princess's small body glowed with the energy of the Heartstone, her chest rising and falling in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Her eyes remained closed, her face serene, yet Jack could feel the weight of her connection to the Heartstone, something ancient, primal, and powerful. He knew that the alien woman was right. This was the last hope of her people, the final chance to stop the Traskians from overwhelming the galaxy. But they couldn't wait much longer. The Traskians were still here. The soldier had his weapon, trained on them. Jack could see the coldness in his eyes, the unwavering certainty that he had won. But Jack wasn't about to let that happen. Not now. The alien woman whispered something under her breath, words Jack couldn't understand. A low hum emanated from the Heartstone, and the light that surrounded the princess intensified, becoming almost unbearable. Jack's vision blurred, but he didn't look away. This was the moment that would determine the future. "Stay with her," Jack said, his voice hoarse. "I'll hold them off." The alien woman's eyes flickered with a mix of fear and gratitude. "You mustn't," she pleaded. "You cannot fight them. This power, it's too much." But Jack was already moving. He knew there was no other choice. He couldn't let the Traskians win, not after everything they had been through, not after all they had sacrificed. "Hand over the princess." Jack's mind raced. He had no plan, no strategy, just a desire to protect. "I won't let you take her," Jack shouted, his voice carrying through the chamber. "This ends now." The Traskian soldier didn't flinch. Instead, he reached for the weapon at his side, the energy rifle gleaming ominously in the dim light. "You are outmatched, human," he said, his voice cold and detached. "You cannot stand against us." Jack's grip tightened on his rifle as he advanced, trying to steady his breath, trying to prepare himself for what was coming. The Traskians were relentless, and they would stop at nothing to capture the Heartstone. But Jack wasn't about to let them take it. Not after everything they had fought for. The soldier fired first. A brilliant bolt of energy shot from the rifle, and Jack barely had time to dive to the side. The blast hit the stone wall next to him, leaving a smoking crater where it had struck. The power of the blast sent shudders through the temple, and dust fell from the ceiling like rain. But Jack was already on the move, darting behind a column to shield himself. His heart raced. The Traskian soldier moved quickly, advancing toward the princess and the alien woman, his rifle raised again. Jack's mind screamed at him to act. He couldn't let the Traskians get any closer to them. "Get down!" Jack shouted to the alien woman. She looked up in confusion, but there was no time to explain. He dove out from behind the column, raising his rifle, and fired. The blast hit the soldier's shoulder, knocking him back a few steps. The soldier grunted, his grip loosening on the rifle, but he didn't fall. He only growled in frustration and aimed his weapon at Jack again. Jack was out of time. He couldn't keep this up. His body was already shaking from the effort, from the sheer force of the energy blasts, but he couldn't let the soldier get any closer. Then, just as Jack was about to fire again, the ground beneath them trembled. The Heartstone pulsed brighter than ever, sending out a wave of energy so powerful that it knocked both Jack and the soldier off their feet. The room around them seemed to twist, the walls glowing with energy as the temple itself seemed to come alive. The soldier struggled to regain his footing, but it was too late. The Heartstone's power was now fully unleashed, and it was beyond anything Jack could have ever imagined. The alien woman stood now, her arms raised toward the princess, her body glowing with the same energy that surrounded the Heartstone. Princess's eyes flickered open, and in that instant, Jack felt the shift in the air. The room, the very planet, seemed to hum with a new energy. And for the first time since they had arrived, Jack felt something that resembled true hope. The princess rose from the altar, her tiny form glowing with the power of her ancestors. The energy in the room surged around her, enveloping her in a sphere of light. The Traskian soldier stared at her in disbelief, his weapon lowered. His gaze shifted from Jack to the alien woman, then back to the princess, as if he finally understood the gravity of the situation. "You've lost," the alien woman said, her voice calm but filled with authority. "The Heartstone is no longer yours. It is hers. It always was." The soldier hesitated, then took a step back, clearly unsure of how to proceed. Jack watched, his breath shallow, as the princess's power expanded, a wave of energy flowing out from her and engulfing the entire chamber. The Traskians had underestimated her. They had underestimated the strength of her people, of her bloodline. The soldier's face twisted with rage. He lunged at the princess, but before he could reach her, the Heartstone's energy surged, and with a single, unspoken command, the Traskian soldier was thrown back, slamming into the wall with such force that he crumpled to the ground, unconscious. The room fell silent. The air hummed with the aftershock of the energy, and Jack slowly stood, his heart still pounding in his chest. The battle was over. The princess had done what they had all hoped, for she had unlocked the power of the Heartstone, and in doing so, she had stopped the Traskians. But Jack knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The princess was only the first step. The galaxy would need more than this to heal. But for now, Atea won, and for now, Atea was enough. The dawn of a new era. The air was thick with the hum of residual energy as the Heartstone's light slowly dimmed, leaving the room bathed in an eerie silence. Jack stood motionless, his eyes still locked on the glowing form of the princess as she floated gently above the stone altar. Her tiny body was surrounded by a shimmering, almost ethereal aura, her small hands reaching outward as if she were calling to something beyond the confines of the chamber. For a moment, the chaos of battle, the fear, and the adrenaline all seemed to melt away. Everything felt suspended in time, as if the universe had held its breath, waiting for this moment. Jack could feel the weight of history pressing down on him, The realization that the future of countless worlds now lay in the hands of a child who had just begun to tap into her unimaginable power. The alien woman stood beside Jack, her face a mixture of awe and relief. "It's done," she whispered. "She has done it." Jack turned to her, his heart pounding in his chest, but a sense of peace washed over him. The battle was over. The Traskians were defeated. But as much as Jack wanted to believe it was truly over, he knew it was only the beginning. The princess's eyes slowly opened, glowing with an intensity Jack had never seen before. The light in her eyes was the same as the Heartstone's a pulse of raw energy, ancient and powerful, that seemed to reach deep into the very soul of the universe. She blinked, her gaze shifting to her mother, and for the first time she smiled, soft, peaceful smile that spoke of innocence and hope. "Mother," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The alien woman's eyes filled with tears as she knelt beside her daughter, cupping the princess's face in her hands. "You did it, my dear," she murmured. "You've awakened the Heartstone. You've saved us all." But as the princess looked around the chamber, Jack saw the faintest flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Her power was vast, beyond anything Jack had imagined. But there was something else there, too, something raw, untapped, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. She was no longer just a child. She was a force that had the power to change everything. "We are not alone," the princess said, her voice steady yet filled with the weight of what she now understood. "The Traskians are only the beginning. There are others. The war is far from over." Jack's heart sank. He had known it was too easy. He had known they couldn't just defeat the Traskians and walk away. The galaxy was too vast, too fractured. But hearing it from Hertha child, who had unlocked the Heartstone's power, made it all too real. The war they had started was only one chapter in a much larger struggle. The alien woman turned to Jack, her expression filled with a mix of hope and fear. "She's right," she said quietly. "The Traskians may have been the greatest threat, but they are not the only one. The galaxy is fractured, and there are those who would do anything to take control of what we've just unlocked." Jack nodded, his thoughts racing. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't a strategist. But he had seen enough to understand one thing. They couldn't fight this alone. Not anymore. "We need help," he said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts inside his head. "We need to reach out. To form alliances. To unite the galaxy before it's too late." The alien woman's eyes softened as she placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "You are right, human. You have done more than you realize. You have helped us reach this point, but the real battle is still to come." The princess, still glowing with the Heartstone's power, turned her gaze to Jack. "You helped save my life," she said softly. "You showed me what it means, too. Fight, but I cannot do this alone. I need your help. The galaxy needs your help." Jack met her gaze, the weight of her words sinking deep into him. He had never considered himself a hero, never imagined he would be caught up in something so much larger than himself. But standing there, in that moment, surrounded by people who were looking to him for leadership, he realized he couldn't walk away. The stakes were too high. "We'll fight together," Jack said, his voice firm. "We'll unite the galaxy. We'll stop them before they destroy everything." The princess nodded, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Together, we'll bring peace." But as the light from the Heartstone slowly dimmed, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far more complicated than they realized. The Traskians were only the first enemy. There were others, hidden forces that would stop at nothing to claim the power of the Heartstone. And with the princess now standing at the heart of that power, Jack knew the fight for the future was just beginning. The silence in the chamber deepened as Jack turned to leave. knowing that the true battle had yet to come. The first step had been taken, but the galaxy was still at war. The princess's power was the key to stopping the enemy. But unlocking the Heartstone had only revealed the vast web of threats that lay beyond. Jack glanced back one final time at the princess and her mother, their faces filled with hope and uncertainty. The path ahead would be difficult, but it was the only path they could take. The war for the future of the galaxy had only just begun. And Jack knew one thing for certain: he was in it for the long haul. The fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But they would face it together, and together they would change the course of history. Asterisk.